First of all, apologies for the delay. We'll begin the event now. A very fine good afternoon to one and all. Welcome to the panel discussion, Film Festivals in Streaming Times, organized as part of the 24th International Film. The event is being jointly organized by the Direction and Screenwriting Department and the Students' Council of the K.R. Narayanan National Institute of Visual Science and Arts and Kerala State Chalachitra Academy. The discussion intends to throw some light on the implications of the advent of streaming platforms like Netflix and Amazon Prime on films that used to go around the world through film festival circuits, while these films today are reaching the audience through the web platforms. First of all, on behalf of the K.R. Narayanan Institute, we have with us the director of the institute, Mr. Shankar Mohan. He served as the director of the Directorate of Film Festivals for more than 25 years and has been the director of the Satyajit Ray Film and Television Institute, Kolkata. He also served as the director of International Film Festival of India held at Goa. With great pleasure, may I invite Sir to welcome the guests and address the gathering. So please.
A very sincere apology for the delayed start. We are waiting for Mr. Adur also to come in, and he will definitely join us shortly. I would at the outset like to thank the Chalachitra Academy and IFFK for having given us this platform to organize this topic, which is very, very relevant, streaming film festivals in streaming times. So at least I thought that we have been able to identify a serious issue that is raising gradually in the film festival circuit with the advent of major giants like Netflix and Amazon, which have a lot of streaming films. Whether we should worry about it, whether we should be concerned about it, or whether we should be looking at films only at festivals, or whether we should be looking at films on these streaming platforms is something that we will eventually find out on our own. But as a topic, I think it's very relevant. These are all stages that each festival has gone through. I was just talking to our co-panelist here. We have some very eminent people who are here today, and they would be introducing themselves and also sharing with you their thoughts on this particular topic, and then we could open up for a Q&A session later on. There was a time when analog was screened only at film festivals, films on 35mm on polyester-based films, and that was a beautiful time. Mr. Adur Gopalakrishnan has just walked in, so Adur sir. So while we were organizing festivals during those times, digital had not happened, and when it happened eventually, it had a lot of tremor within the festival circuit, because it was a new platform. There was a whole new technology behind the digital that was happening. And the festivals were very reticent, and they didn't want to handle digital because firstly getting films on digital was not so easy. You had to negotiate with various film firms who owned these films, negotiate with them, and then finally negotiate with the company which had the key to these films. And everything was on the internet. But eventually over the years people have got used to it, and now films are primarily screened on digital. Unless otherwise we are screening films with archival intent. Similarly, there is a drastic or a sudden change that is happening with Netflix and Amazon, who are trying to have monopoly in this field with regard to streaming of films. They are investing huge amounts. Even some of the contemporary filmmakers, well-known contemporary filmmakers, are making films with Netflix, and we often get to see their films on Netflix. Now, whether that should be a matter of concern for film festivals or whether it should not be will be known within the next few years. My personal view is that it would not make a dent because essentially human beings would like to gather together. We basically have a sense of community, and we will always come together for festivals. Of course, we will all like to see a movie once in a while on Netflix or Amazon or YouTube or whatever streaming platforms are available. But eventually, if there's a film festival or there's an outstanding film that is being screened, we will always like to have the theatrical experience that none of these streaming platforms can give us. So with these few words, I would also like to thank the students of the direction and screenplay department here. They have done an excellent job of organizing these two festivals. My personal congratulations to them, and also to Vipin, who has been behind this. So thanks to all of them that we have these seminars happening during IFFK. And very shortly I will request our esteemed chief guest for today, Sri Adur Gopalakrishnan, to formally inaugurate this session. Thank you so much.
We're extremely honored to have with us today veteran filmmaker Sri Adur Gopalakrishnan. With great pleasure, may I invite him to address the gathering and formally inaugurate the event. Sir, please.
Dear friends, I am here just to mark my support to what you do. More than trying to enlighten you on the subject, it is simply just for that only I am here. I think Shankar Bhavan has already said it, but let me repeat that film festivals are a time when we all gather together. We talk about cinema, we see cinema, we discuss them. We also have seminars where we talk about different subjects. We have these retrospectives, we have these special homages. Nothing can really replace it. This is my very strong feeling. And also the films are not really made for being viewed on a small little screen, whether it is your PC or your regular computer. So also, if you look at television, a film on a television screen, you find you get only the medium range level of sounds, heard from it. And also, when a film is made, it is meant to be seen in a particular size. That's very important. And also, the film is invariably seen in a dark theatre with lot many people sitting around and responding to a work together. It's very interesting. That does not happen when you are alone and you are. It's basically you don't see even 1/4 of the film on a small screen. So we don't see films because it's at a very, very elementary level. People are interested in knowing what happened to the character and then what happened, that kind of thing. That is only the very basic instinctive level. And beyond that, cinema as an art form needs to be seen and heard at various levels. There are cinema, and again, this is the only medium man has invented where it is possible to meditate. Cinema is basically, it has the potential to meditate. No other art form has it. So it is a very, very special form of art man has created with the scientific progress and then the human development. So this is has gone into thousands of years. It's like Picasso once told an admirer, she wanted a picture to be drawn by him. So in a few seconds, he did a drawing and gave it to her and said, "Don't throw it away, keep it." And years passed, then Picasso became so internationally famous, and she went back to him. And then she asked him, "Mr. Picasso, how is it that it took only few seconds for you to draw this?" Then he said, "My dear lady, it is 65 years of my life. This little drawing that I did, that is what you see there. Same way, it is hundreds of years of human development that you see in cinema. It has developed and evolved out of so many forms of entertainment and intellectual exercise that we have been able to, in terms of theatre, poetry, in terms of other forms of expressions. So it's a very unique art form, and in its essence, it is it should be seen in a regular theatre. Today, now the possibilities are immense of the subject. This morning also I was seeing a film where you hear sound from different tracks at the same time, because with the optical cinema that we used to do earlier, all the tracks used to be mixed into one track. Now the tracks don't really mix, they remain separate. It's very interesting. So each track can reproduce sound from a different microphone speaker. So this is a big possibility that has opened with the new development in the sound technology. Same with picture also. The processing has been done away with. At the same time, it is already progressing. The technology is already progressing towards the real definition of a optical film with the digital format. So all these are happening. They are not necessarily meant for people to see a thing, a film in its very odd form on your personal computer. That's not the idea. It can be seen. It is only for the layman. I think for the professional, for somebody who is into really enjoying cinema as it is, it is not really the one recommended. So the question of streaming taking over cinema itself is, I don't see it. It is an immediate threat, not even a distant threat. So in fact, there are even today's time, there are already parallel efforts being made to bring back the optical film to filmmaking. It may not succeed because everything has changed in this last few years' time. But all the same, cinema in its essence, I hope it will remain, it will continue to be so. And the festivals are very, very important for cinema. We don't have television festivals because television is to be seen and forgotten. It is not to be retained with you. It is to be seen and forgotten. What is essential about television is the immediacy of the incidents, things happening around the world being brought to you inside your room. That is the very speciality of television. But then that cannot be catered with what you see on television in terms of cinema. So I'm sure you'll have a very fruitful discussion here, and now I have to I have to excuse myself from here because I have to go and see a film now. So thank you all and wish you very well for a very, very fruitful discussion. Thank you very much.
Film art. She is the founder of Experimenta, an international festival for experimental cinema in India. She has curated various experimental film programs for festivals worldwide. Welcome, ma'am. We have with us Mr. Pinaki Chatterjee, a producer and an editor. He has ventured to explore co-production opportunities between India and other European nations for developing the Indian independent film market. Hearty welcome, sir. We have one more guest with us who is yet to arrive, Mr. Hamid Hossain, an internationally acclaimed filmmaker and an artist. His works have been screened and have won numerous accolades in film festivals across the world. We are awaiting his arrival. May I introduce Mr. Vipin Vijay, an internationally acclaimed filmmaker and the faculty coordinator of K.R. Narayanan National Institute of Visual Science and Arts. Welcome, sir. Today's discussion, sir. Now may I hand over to Mr. C.S. Venkateswaran to take over as the moderator for the session today. So please.
I first of all congratulate K.R. Narayanan Institute for organizing a seminar like this in a festival forum. I think festivals are also meant to discuss contemporary issues relating to not only the aesthetics of cinema but also about the future of cinema and film festivals. So this theme is basically a very relevant theme, as Shankar Mohan sir was saying. I will just, there's an eminent panelists to discuss it, filmmakers, programmers, even someone like Pinaki, who is in the business of streaming, here to talk about it. So I'll be basically talking about flagging certain issues relating to this theme from the point of view of a film lover, a film film festival goer, rather than as a filmmaker or programmer. So basically, what I'm trying to say is, as already been indicated, we are living in changing times, where the film festivals, as they exist now, may be going in for a huge change. In the sense, there is a kind of radical shift, as everyone knows, from the 90s to the digital, and it has affected, with the coming of the streaming platforms, it has actually affected distribution, exhibition, and viewing of films. The very experience of viewing cinema, as Aldur was referring to, the whole network of showing films around the world through festivals, through television channels or other platforms, and all the whole idea about distribution of films. Everything is going to change. It's already changed in a way. So how is it actually going to affect the film festivals as we know it now, as we experience it now? So we had, if you look at the kind of, the way in which films used to circulate around the world, you had these, big filmmakers or the masters or their films appearing in the major film festivals, like maybe Cannes or Venice, Berlin, something like that. Then they go to other festivals around the world, smaller festivals, IFFK or whatever. Then we used to have, theater releases of those films. Then you used to have television screens, broadcasting those films. Then again, maybe you had it on YouTube or you had it on web platforms. But now what is happening is a huge shift straight away from the film festivals going straight to the streaming platforms, where you are reaching out to a person sitting all over the world. For instance, Netflix is claiming that they have around 139 million subscribers all over the world, except for North Korea, Syria, and China. So there is a kind of huge kind of viewership, subscribership that they are talking about. So taking the films straight to the audience and bypassing all these other platforms which we are used to, through which opinions used to be created, through which a lot of discourses were happening about cinema, about filmmakers, about aesthetics and all that. Now it is going straight to the laptops or to the home theaters of the different subscribers. So it is actually, there's a huge kind of short-circuiting or bypassing of a lot of networks that used to exist in the film festival or the film viewing circuits. So what they are claiming is, instead of you going to watch cinema, cinema is going to come to you. That is what they are, claiming to achieve. And also they promise to give the best of world cinema to the subscriber, rather than wait for its, journeys through other festivals and other platforms. So basically, on the one side, there is this, offer of filmmakers getting an opportunity to reach out to the whole world at one go. Like, you don't have to, go through all the circuits as you did earlier, and you can actually, you are actually, as maybe a distributor, should be saving a lot as you reach directly to the ultimate consumer. For instance, if you look at Netflix or Amazon Prime, Mubi, all these platforms are actually trying to offer. For instance, Netflix is offering a new unreleased film every Friday, which is something which is going to change the scenario of the very mandate of film festivals. So, for instance, if you look at what I'm trying to present are certain concerns, certain apprehensions from the point of view of the film goer. For instance, if you look at the kind of many filmmakers, if you look at the discussions around these streaming platforms and their engagements with film festivals, like you had this huge Netflix presence being announced through this the Roma being in a Netflix production, getting award in Cannes and all that. Then Cannes Festival having a lot of series of problems with streaming because of the stringent conditions about theatrical releases to happen after a certain a lapse of time. So and Netflix pulling out a lot of films from the festivals, even from the competition section. All these were creating waves and also clearly creating a kind of a tussle between the streaming platforms and the film festivals, the celebrated film festivals, and also like, for instance, somebody like Sarandos, who heads the Netflix, saying, "No, we are with the future of cinema. If Cannes Film Festival want to stay with the history of cinema, let them do it. But we are with the future of cinema." That is what he said. So basically, looking at the kind of the procurement, film procurement that has happened in the beginning, we are the beginning of streaming era. A lot of serious cinema, a lot of independent filmmakers have been procured. Like they are getting their new platforms through the streaming media. But is it going to continue? Is it going to actually give independent filmmakers all over the world a new platform, a new economic opportunity to make it big, to reach out to the world? That is one question that is a possibility that is opened up, and also a kind of, if you look at, for instance, if you look at the fate of the trend of teleserials that are doing its rounds now all over the world, because very, very popular, all these teleserials which are being produced from basically what we call the first world, and how it travels around, how it has actually affected. If you look at the teleserials that are being made in a country like India, how it has changed through a few years, how the whole aesthetics, the whole format, the whole storytelling methods, the narrative styles, all these getting streamlined, serialized to a certain kind of formats, which is what could happen to cinema also. That is what I'm just expressing my apprehension. So is it going to be a kind of, you're going to finally fall in line with certain kind of majoritarian taste created by companies like Netflix or Amazon? That is one apprehension that one could, raise. Another is actually the question of film festivals themselves. What is going to happen to film festivals? As Adur was saying, that's a kind of international platform for cinema, serious cinema, which showcases the best of cinema every year. And you had, for instance, if you look at the film festivals themselves, you can see there's a kind of, in case of content, what they're showing, what they're packaging as content in different festivals. There has been a shift during the last, especially after the 90s. You can see that there is, if in the pre-90s, for maybe pre-USSR Berlin Wall era, you had a kind of, the film festival, the films that made their course through the film festivals were actually selected by national agencies or publicly funded bodies who used to, select films from their own countries and send it around. You had, a kind of national agencies, public funds and institutions managing the show, selecting also. So they had some claim of representing a particular culture or people or whatever. Then there is a kind of huge shift towards programmers, individual programmers and curators and festival directors actually, entering the scene and hugely, influencing the content and what is what, who is the contemporary master. All these are actually decided by a set of curators and programmers. And obviously it is, a kind of hugely, favored, bias towards the West. Even if you look at third world film festivals, you can see there's huge kind of, these Berlin, Venice, Cannes still remain the festival everyone is looking up to. So that is one. Now is it going to shift to streaming platforms? Are they going to decide what is in and what is out? And are they going to decide the kind of, the aesthetics of cinema? There is one question that we may have to pose. And once you are, if you look at the kind of pattern that is emerging now, if the streaming platforms like Netflix or Amazon are going to pick and choose or procure films from the major festivals and then taking it straight to the streaming platforms and bypassing all the other circuits of other smaller festivals, theatre releases, television channels and all that, how is it going to affect smaller festivals? That is one major question. What are they going to do with their content, which used to be, international in that sense, which used to represent all kinds of films, and also the best of, what is happening in cinema in contemporary times. So if a lot of films are being picked out, for instance, this year Amazon had bought 40 films on Sundance and they're taken straight to their streaming platform. So what happens to those films? Are they never going to get through these film festival circuits and platforms and discourses? All that is happening around physical, people gathering physically to watch films and see it. So it'll also actually affect small festivals in a big way. For instance, festival like IFFK, how is it going to create content? Or also alternatively, is this kind of incursion of streaming platforms, will it drive small festivals, or local festivals, or regional festivals, or third world festivals, or whatever you call, to look for more regional content? Will they be forced to actually broaden their vision of films? They scout for more films from various languages, various other kinds of which never had a chance to get into the big league. So is it going to create a kind of, is it going to trigger the smaller festivals to look out for more a variety of content? Will it enrich that? Will it actually, will they go out and look for other kinds of cinemas which will actually enrich, it will also help local independent filmmakers and also make the festivals a much more regionally relevant, politically much more relevant kind of content. Lastly, I would just flag one more point and then conclude my presentation. There is also this whole question of shift from film festival culture to streaming culture is also something that is very deeply related to the culture of film viewing as such, as Adoor and Shankar Mohan was actually hinting at, like the experience of watching cinema in a big hall, where you're watching big screen in darkness, alone and together with others. That experience has, is it what I would call the publicness of cinema? Is it going to shift to this kind of experience of watching it at home in a home theater? Cinema viewing being shifted to domestic spaces and timings, flexible timings as and when the viewer wants to see it. So actually, maybe one big question about the publicness of cinema itself, reasserting itself in the film festival space could be one response to the kind of shift to streaming. Basically because this is not just a question of, it's not a technical issue or technological issue, or of consumer rights, of the rights of the subscriber to watch the best of cinema from the world, but it's also a question of film culture itself. The habit, the view, the way in which we watch films, experience movies itself comes into question here, I think. Like some independent filmmaker, James Gray, I'll just quote him, he says the major negative is that intimacy, that womb-like intimacy that we have with the screen no longer speaks to me with the coming of streaming movies, where it goes straight to one's laptops or to houses. You actually, you're missing, or you're actually taking the publicness of cinema out of it. Like we are making it a kind of personal kind of experience, domesticated kind of experience. Thirdly, it is a question of, as already been indicated, we are just at a cusp of change. Like it is going to change. It is changing, and you just can't, prevent this change from happening because it is technologically driven. It is driven by global entertainment industry and all that. So, is it going to have a kind of, what is going to happen? What will be the kind of, geopolitics of the entertainment industry that is going to happen with the shift to streaming? For instance, if you look at the way in which many European cinemas are resisting Hollywood, and also the role film festivals have played in promoting independent cinema all over the world. Like they have played a huge role in promoting, identifying, encouraging, producing independent cinema throughout the world. So with the coming to streaming, is it going to is it going to be affected in a big way, and also about the kind of global reach that these streaming platforms have, and the kind of impact they are going to have on people's expectations about films, people's taste of cinema, people's notions about technical excellence, production qualities. All these are going to be affected by these, huge churn of films that are going to come through them. So you're just paying, you're a subscriber, you have access to all kinds of films. So through time, one apprehension could be that of gradually molding the taste of people, the technical expectations about technical excellence, about cinema, all this getting serialized in a particular way, so that you create a kind of global aesthetic which is much in tune with the market, because if you look at the way in which teleserials, huge global teleseries are running, and the other kinds of content that is provided by these global media platforms, all this is actually run by these algorithms of viewing. Who is viewing what, where. This huge big data is going to actually decide which is best for the market, which is the most sellable product in the market, which is which will sell. So I think is market logic goes, you had this kind of diversity of film festivals, their content, their taste, their locations, all these were actually enriching cinema in a particular way. But is it going to be serialized? Is it going to be streamlined into the taste of this global market logic, which will be dictated by the algorithms of the streaming platforms? That is one big concern that one could articulate at the moment now. So I'll conclude my brief presentation with this question about, are we going to succumb to the algorithms of the global market and streaming companies, or are we going to reinvent and reassert film festivals as a site of a celebration of physical presence of film lovers and filmmakers? Thank you. Now we'll go to the panelists. First I would like to invite Shaya Redya to present her views.
Hi. So I have very few points really, but just to give you a little context about what I do, I run an experimental film festival called Experimenta, which I started in Bombay in 2003. The festival has thereafter been in Bangalore since 2006. It is a biennial. When we started the festival, we had about 100 people that came over 3 days, and now we have about 600 people that come over 7 days. So in terms of the experience of viewing and in terms of audiences coming to the cinema, I feel that is not something that is going to change no matter what other platforms exist for exhibition. But so essentially, Experimenta, what we do is they're curated programs. We invite curators internationally to show experimental work, both new and historical. We mix archival films with contemporary films. The idea really is to build on the discourse of experimental cinema. The idea is also to support filmmakers and filmmaking practice. So essentially, people who come there come to the festival are filmmakers who are interested in building and discussing their own forms of practice. We have and there's also a strong pedagogical angle to the festival. So essentially, Experimenta kind of exists in some ways. It's a small festival, of course, compared to this, but it exists in a world where film lovers and filmmakers kind of come together to build on their own practice. So, I mean, I think considering the context that I come from, I just have a few points really to respond to this question. I think a lot of it has already been said between the previous panelists. So I think that we need to, of course, consider the role of film festivals historically. Historically, the film festivals have been important really for access to work, access to new cutting-edge forms of practice, of filmmaking practice, essentially also to nurture culture. As we know, historically, film festivals used to also play a diplomatic role. You had film prints that were coming through, being circulated through film societies. Those film prints were coming through different countries. So there were several of those kinds of agendas, but essentially it was about access to new, inspiring work. And usually cutting-edge work, and about building on cultural practices. Over the years, however, as we have seen, film festivals have always adapted, not died, as has always been the position. People always talk about it being in crisis, but film festivals have always adapted. So when you had the DVD, the influx of the whole DVD generation, then you had the whole period of torrenting, and then, of course, the whole digital versus film discourse. Film festivals have always adapted. Fundamentally, I think that's because, as has already been said, people value the collective experience of cinema. As we all sit together in the cinema, we sign a social contract with each other that we're all going to be watching those films together in this darkened room. So I think that experience is something that is irreplaceable. And I think all of us here are aware of that. The fact that there are 12,500 delegates at this festival, I think, says that as well. So yeah, I mean, I think that the film festival experience is alive and well. But coming now to the topic of what we're talking about today, and how to respond to streaming times. So frankly, in my view, if a festival really is concerned about, I mean, and you have to understand that where I come from is the festival that has a different set of ideas and agendas and concerns. So for me, if a film festival is concerned about or competing with films that are released in the mainstream, then that's a major problem. A festival is not supposed to mirror the mainstream. I think that festivals that are concerned about this should really be looking very closely at their programming and rethink what they are showing, because being an extension of the market is not the role of the festival, as far as I'm concerned. And just to say that I think that the existence of Netflix is very good for filmmakers to get opportunities to make work. Many more filmmakers are able to make work, put it out there, get funding, all that's great. However, I do think that we need to be aware that there is a Netflix formula developing, which, whether we like it or not, one has begun to see that there is a particular expectation of the kind of work that Netflix places out there, unless, of course, you're a star like Martin Scorsese. Also, I think we need to be aware that this discussion particularly seems to be focused on a particular kind of fiction festival. Experimental and documentary festivals exist in different contexts. They have a different set of parameters, and cinema, and therefore we should really be conscious of the fact that cinema exists in different forms and genres, and not just fiction storytelling. So in conclusion, I just want to say that I think these contexts will continue to coexist, and that I think that for that to happen, festivals need to really consider what the kind of programming that festivals are doing. Thanks.
Hussein, I'm a Lebanese filmmaker and an artist. I also do experimental films, and I run an art space in Beirut. I'm not an academic, so I'm gonna talk about, I also didn't prepare that much, but as a filmmaker in the middle of all this debate and battle that's been running all the time and reading about it, I'm gonna talk about my own feeling, experience, and opinion as a filmmaker if this debate about streaming and film festivals. So I'm not organizing ideas. I will speak like different opinions here and there. In the Arab world, which is like, I don't know, 3 billion, 4 billion people, 3 billion and a half, Netflix has been around there for 2-3 years fishing for new projects. And until now, they only produced one TV series among thousands, I'm sure, of projects that they get applied. And filmmakers, friends, they have been rewriting for 2-3 years. And Netflix, this powerful giant streaming, come all the time to the Arab world, do meetings, tell all the filmmakers to rewrite and rewrite again, meeting with all the producers, and people are waiting, and you can feel this like aggression and aggressive way of everyone want to be in Netflix, and everyone want to apply for Netflix, and want to write TV series for Netflix. I think this is very dangerous, but at the same time, I totally understand, because of lack of the production and the lack of the funding in the Arab world. Yeah, everyone want to get produced by this kind of platforms. They produced one TV series that not that much people liked it actually, and it didn't go well. So what they did, Netflix, surprisingly, they went to a ready TV soap series that they are ready for Ramadan, and they bought them and put them on Netflix instead of producing it. And usually those are really just not even commercial mainstream. We call them fast food for Ramadan, or 30 episode that we watch during the fasting. So and everyone got shocked about that, but that say a lot, that at the end it's a platform that they want to gain money, and it's about the market. I'm saying these things to say that when it comes to this kind of streamings, I don't find Amazon or Netflix dangerous that much more than Disneyland, like example. If we have to be worried, we have to be worried about Disneyland, like example. And why? It's because of the content that they want to produce for us, or what kind of visual they want to produce. Because at the end, even though there start to be a kind of format, if you go to Netflix, I get bored after 2-3 months, to be honest, because watching those TV series, I felt like I'm watching the same things. If I'm watching the same format of films that they are really poor in their content, let's say, after 2-3 months. And a lot of friends or a lot of filmmakers, they share the same, that you, after 3, 4, 5 months, you try this Netflix, and I'm not saying that's not important for the people who sit at their home and watch this kind of TV series. So the whole debate at the end, it's about the market. It's not about cinema. So this is not about cinema. And I was in Marrakesh last week, and they were screening Irishman. And Scorsese was sending video letter, and Harvey Keitel was on stage. And you can feel, and he said, Scorsese, that he was so glad that Irishman has been in big screen. And he even mentioned later on in the media, please don't watch my film on iPhone. Shame on you, Scorsese. That's what everyone was saying. Because in the plane, I found a lot of people watching Irishman on the iPhone. At the end, it's all about the market, it's not about the cinema. Because there's another theory also by Alfonso Cuarón, who said, I took benefit from this market, because at the end, between the streaming and between the theaters, the studios, Hollywood, that they control the whole thing about cinema, I take benefit in order to gain more money for my films, and that doesn't mean that affect my film or affect of my way of doing cinema. And I believe also in that. I know that most of us here are kind of against this kind of, the film been immediately streaming on Netflix before going into big theaters or big cinema. But if those filmmakers are able to take this benefit from this clash of economy between the streaming and the theaters, let it be. And I think the responsibility now, before talking about festivals, I'm talking about, because the battle is now between, or not the battle, debate is between the theaters, the studios, and the streaming. Because before the cinema started as a home. Yeah? I mean, the beginning was Lumiere, who was screening in his house. You know, he put the projector and streaming. And then 1905, they realized that we can be a big, make it a big experience, and they started the big theaters. But it started as a home cinema. And then the VHS came, and there was an agreement that, okay, 90 days we put the film in the theaters, and after 90 days we can copy it on VHS, and everyone can watch in his house. Now the whole debate is about, shall we put first, and that's Cannes what he's saying, that's Venice is against it, because Venice is like, okay, I cannot stop the future, I cannot stop this, I'm gonna take films even though it will be on Netflix after 1 week. Cannes saying different, even though Thierry Frémaux is always, the director of Cannes, he was always saying, it's also not about it's all about the market, because between watching 1,000 art film, because now all of us want to do kind of art film, he always say, sometimes between watching 1,000 bad art film and 2-3 that they are good films, even though they are very close to mainstream, I prefer this sometimes to screen in a festival. So it's also about what kind of films we want to produce, because again, what I'm saying, I don't believe it's about cinema and us as filmmakers if we're gonna get affected by this kind of debate or of this kind of streaming online before going to theater or not. I think it's all about the market, and as a filmmaker, an independent filmmaker, and also the filmmaker who deal with experimental, I always want my film to be on big screen, of course, but I don't find myself get engaged in this kind of debate, because I believe, again, they are fighting about money and how they gain more from us as filmmakers. So what else? Yeah, mainly this is it. Thank you.
Hello, hello friends. Just before coming over here, I'd sent in I got a text message from film historian Amrut Gangar asking, are you attending the film festival? I said yes, and then I said we are organizing a dialogue and discussion, a panel discussion. So, and I sent the subject, the topic of the discussion to him, film festivals and screening times. So he sent me back a text saying it should not be streaming, it should be screaming, which is a good way to start off. And actually, I mean, probably it hints at the fact that I'm much going to talk about a certain kind of regression. There are two aspects of me being here. One, as a filmmaker, I would call I'm a marginal filmmaker, and I think I'm mythologically marginalized. My films don't sell, and they don't have any messages of prosperity. So I think inevitably the reinvention is happening at several other domains, and I wouldn't call myself an independent filmmaker. I'm dependent on so many things, like the people who give me patronage and a lot of people actually, institutions, people who have surplus recently, and I wouldn't mind to exploit any of my friends who have surplus sitting over here. Also this morning, after a long time, my mother has become extremely anxious about what am I doing, and stuff like that. So I said I'm going to do a fiction feature film. So again, my mother asked the same question: do you have a story in your film? So this time I had an answer for her, because I quoted from Jean Epstein, one of the early forerunners of French Impressionism, and perhaps the first theoretician. And many of my students were introduced to this book called The Photoplay. He says the story is a lie, the truth is in cinema. So the second thing is definitely the pedagogical interest, because as an academic, I teach a lot of undergraduate students, and some of them are sitting here. And so it is to ensure a discourse or perhaps a dialogue on the ontological factor fact of motion pictures. Now this is, I would, because I know nothing about the market. I've been to, my works have been shown in Rotterdam, I've won Tiger Award and stuff like that. So I've been to Cinemark and I've seen some of the biggest markets in the world, but I've never sold anything, and my films I don't think so it's going to change anytime. But I would rather look at this discussion not from the technological shift, not how technologically it is affected, but phenomenologically. Phenomenologically, when I say how it has affected my senses and how my own motor sensory mechanisms have been affected by this this shift that is happening in the market economy. Well, how do you make films within this disastrous late capitalist environment? Is one question. So, like what Andre Bazin says, you know, there's a seminal work of his which is called What is Cinema? And I think we need to reframe it and ask, where is cinema this evening? Forgive me, I might contradict myself. I'm trying to quote from several people, but a quote, I'm using it like a weapon to kind of open up something. Well, this over a period of 100 years, this whole idea about the transference from still image to moving image, the difference between film, cinema, and the cinematics, as Christopher Metz says, needs to be relooked. I would like to start probably to hint at two factors, maybe trivia. I would like to call them as trivia. Trivia, as you know, little known facts, probably unimportant, which we collected while researching for a project. Trivia 1. I'll read this. One of the rulers in Bengal in 14th century, Nasrat Shah, devised a unique way to execute the death sentence. The convicts used to be fed sweets to heart's content, but were refused a single drop of water. After that, the convicts were kept locked in room, and through the window of which they could see a water tank with fresh water very near. But they were unable to reach that. Thus, their want to water were further intensified by the forced visual stimulation, and finally they used to collapse to the ground. The story is still resonating in the popular imagination through a place, Pias Bari, Pias is thirst, in Malda district in West Bengal. Trivia 2. In the late 80s, a very popular film in Bangla was titled Bade Meer Josna. The English translation is Josna the Gypsy Girl. It broke all box office records of previous hits. The section of rural people who generally had not bothered much about urban entertainment also came from remote parts to see the film. The film was so appealing that people got immediate immersion in it. One mother, it might be a true incident or it might be an urban legend, also came with an infant who was to be breastfed. The child was suckled during the film, and like others, the mother also got heavily engrossed into the film. At the end of the film, the mother noticed the child had died on her lap some time back, suffocated by the weight of the breast. The story, I presume, got circulated as an extraordinary mark of the popularity of the film. As far as the present topic of the discussion that we are having today, these two anecdotes can be a beginning point to talk about the two aspects, sensation and immersion, in the premise of art of watching cinema and life in general. Globalization is an historical dialectical process. Cultural globalization tends to produce one of the three results: differentiation, assimilation, or hybridization. there are multiple historical layers of hybridity. Cultural hybridization refers to the ways, I quote, the ways in which forms become separated from existing practices and recombine with new forms and new practices. Automatic relationship between the local and the global produces the hybrid. The identities are not assimilated independently, but instead elements of cultures are incorporated to create a new hybrid culture. Thus, the local and the global interact, and a new public sphere of watching, reception, and assimilation is formulated. So the first and the foremost topic of interest for me in this discussion is to look into the position in terms of the reception of cinema, and to define the position, one of the prime stakeholders of this reception, the spectator. There are at least two ways of approaching this topic. The first would be a historic reviewing of specific norms of defining who a spectator is, without forgetting the different kind of places, social formations, and audiences in the history of cinema. In the first phase, the spectator is a mass subject belonging to the era of the development of the big studios, revolutionary propaganda, and the rise of various forms of fascism. In the second phase, which is the post-World War II, and prepared by the sound cinema before the war, the subject of the citizen appears. It is with this subject that, at least virtually, a more open critical relation to cinema is instituted. This phase significantly corresponds to the theoretical extension of the notion of the shot. It is also a time in the history of cinema where major theoreticians started emerging. Maybe you can, as I referred about Jean Epstein, then Hugo Munsterberg, definitely André Bazin, and of course André Morlot. The third phase is the one we are now in, the information revolution and the logics of the digital image. There are now two kinds of cinema. On one side, a globally dominant commercial cinema, as some of the panelists said, which probably is a threat. It's not a threat for the kind of practice that I do, but yet it is part of a certain positionality of that kind of cinema, the commercial cinema, and which creates a very interesting, spectacular art, still supposed to attract a large audience, above all those young spectators, with its technological mutations, especially with the video games with which film must compete, which is very stereotypical, which creates shock and unspecific violence of images. On the other side, perhaps people like me belong there, we have a cinema that is increasingly local, diversified, at the same time as it becomes ever more international, seeking everywhere to gain spectators' attention, an art of resistance. I really want to coin this term, the art of resistance. I've been thinking about it. I'm resisting. What is this art of resistance? That is exactly where I want to end what I'm trying to now locate in terms of this dialogue. This type of cinema spectator is no longer either the mass subject or the subject of a people. I mean, Deleuze would call it as missing people, invoked by Deleuze. And I would like to show a clip of Deleuze talking to film students at La Famis in Paris. Very specifically talks about what is an idea for cinema, and this idea of resistance, actually. The art of cinema spectator within this logic and a history would have to follow the twin terms, shock and distraction. Shock is rightly which can grab the attention or equally distract it. An attention which is born of shock. Attention is the term chosen by Jonathan Carey in his most recent great book, Suspensions of Perception, to define the ever livelier concentration of the image during the 19th century. Straight off, we have one important question. What is the crisis in cinema now? On the one hand, it is the dark theater. I think Adu sir said it, many other people hinted at it. The dark theater. On the other, cinema's means of recording that has shifted over a period of time.
post 2000. What they have in common is a certain passivity of the medium, film or digital, and or the spectator. Things are imprinted twice. First film, either on the film strip or on a sensor, then upon the spectator. It creates a temporality. Film historian Sergei Dany is clear. He says, it is a time of the maturing of a film within the body and nervous system of a spectator in the darkness. He adds that this relation to time allows us to pass from the passivity of he who looks to the activity of he who writes. Attentiveness to and memory of shots, their unfoldings and phrasing, their rhythm, that the great theoretician Sergei Dany spoke across his texts and particularly his diary entries. In one of his diary entries, he says, the shot, quote, the shot is an indivisible block of image and time. The shot is musical, breath, rhythm. There is cinema whenever inexplicably something breathes between the images. In cinema, the only thing I care about is the shots. The only true unbroken element is the theater, the darkness, the fixed time of screening, whatever form it takes, as long as it perceives the experience of a projection in time and its inscription on the memory screen, so that a special kind of work can occur. This is what was expressed very well in 1912 by the author, whose identity remains unknown. Many people know his name, hidden under the pseudonym Y.H. Cam. I don't know how it is pronounced. Let's call it Y. Cam. He says, this is his quote, this should be 1912, the darkness of the theater constitutes an important factor contributing via the contemplation it produces, far more than one might imagine, to the impression created. The spectator's attention is solicited and concentrated on the luminous projection without any possible distraction emanating from the theater space. Please note this word, contemplation. Here is what Alfonso Reyes says after 3 years, that is in 1915, after the enigmatic Y-Cam. He says, quote, the perfect film spectator demands silence, isolation and darkness. He's working, collaborating in the spectacle. 4 years later, again some words from the Danish filmmaker Urban Gad, describing the screen by invoking the superior reality of a mirror. He says, the screen is suspended above us, obliging us to lift our eyes. One must remember Jean-Luc Godard's famous words cited by Chris Marker, who extends them in a CD-ROM titled In Memory, made in 1997, where he says, cinema is what's bigger than us, to which we have to lift our eyes. What we see on TV is the shadow of a film, a regret for a film, its nostalgia, its echo, never a real film. Coming to the new shifts in viewing, watching films on the internet, one of the most popular ways to experience cinema today has changed many aspects how cinema is perceived. Much has been written on how the notion and practices of the archive have been changed by the online cinema, or the notion of time in cinema, or the notion of public and private, as well as on the perception of images from different formats. What is important is the psychophysical impact and the way it organizes behavior towards the world. With online cinema, time does not simply progress, but rather expands like the universe in all directions, differentiating its structures while it meshes are set. In March 2010, YouTube announced 24 hours of video uploaded every minute. Through repetition and combining on the web, each one of these images resonates in the other. It now goes beyond the control of the individual. Each of these images have gone into that extent. Being on the internet, it changes our behavior. Social factor remains hidden. Digital imaging practice is, in the end, a certain visual culture and the beginning of a new kind of training to adjust to behaviors. Just like the old cinema, online cinema has to fulfill a social function to establish equilibrium between human beings and the apparatus. I would like to see this as watching Man with a Movie Camera, watching films in the days of Vartho, where time loops and close-ups and pans and montages to move environments much fast to consciously grasp every detail were all deciphered or not deciphered, but it created a behavior or a consumption, a sort of an optical unconscious of one's everyday life. The second order observation of one's own behavior is self-reflective and self-producing. The histories of those chains of actions and decisions on the web produces a digital unconscious of their users. New media theoretician Gerrit Loving asks, what does it mean that our attention is being guided by database systems? He says rightfully and says that right, and he tries to rightfully inquire into the relationship between electronic mediations and that of psychological pathways which correspond in the structure in order to understand the impact of the web-based content. This is not just one of the desires and dreams, as Godard insisted, but also of the simple capitalist utilization. The old logic of the dream factory returns in online mode. To conclude, two aspects of internet cinema are important. Firstly, the reorganization and changing image structures through duration, even if ultra short of viewing, and secondly, the social aspect of cinema, of establishing and transforming relationship with others. I'm sure, I don't know, I mean, just on a lighter way, people get these messages on, videos on WhatsApp and other things, I don't know how many people watch it the second time. Also, I was just thinking today while typing this down, I was trying to download the talk of Deluge, and it is very interesting. On this right side, I could see on the YouTube channel, I can see the searches I've done over the last 1 month. It includes my ticketing that I had to do to go to Hyderabad. It includes also the kind of word search on place names that I've done. It includes also an interview of Andrei Tarkovsky. And on this side is an automated thing that the YouTube brings in. So I just checked in, it was street foods of Calcutta, actually. Below Deluge's talk that he delivered at La Femis. And then maybe below that it would be something. So I think it's about a screen, it's also about a screen dynamics, or the mapping of the dynamics of the screen, actually. That is also one of the shifts. The complex procedures of internet perception show an ongoing and unsure loop of visual data, frame and image, layers and levels of information. Much fluctuation, testing and oscillating happens between data sets, which should by no means be regarded as loss of responsible and self-dependent thought. As Bernard Stiegler puts it, instead this kind of oscillating attention is a sensitive process that will constantly change levels and parameters of approach until finally an image emerges that makes sense or changes the mind of the person who's watching it. In some sense, three speakers, including then Adu sir and Shankar Mohan sir have spoken. And I think it also indicates that although there is a kind of shift happening, there's also an indication from the earlier speakers that there is a kind of a flux situation. How do we address this regression? But we need to resist. I come back to this notion from which we started. Where does a work of art fit into the critique of the society of control? Referring to Foucault, definitely. Today at this venue, as we stand, it's all about art, counter-information, acts of resistance. To conclude, I go to the question posed by one of the greatest philosophers of all time, Deleuze. What is a creative act? What do you exactly do when you make cinema? It's a painful question, as Deleuze says. What is it to have an idea in cinema? Probably it is about the act of resistance. Deleuze actually tries to look into two phases of the act of resistance, that of human and art. Both resist death. We could see this clip from the lecture that he'd given at La Femis. The picture quality of the video is very poor. It's okay to have a poor video because we are now living in the age of poor images. But the intentionality of the philosopher has to be taken seriously. Can we see the clip? And maybe take up questions. I mean, Pinaki, Pinaki is an old friend. I don't know. So Pinaki studied at Jadavpur University and did comparative literature. Goes to Film and Television Institute of India, Pune. He's been an old friend. Now he's a producer. I remember we were in Film Bazaar. I think many people know. I was pitching a film, a Malayalam film, and there were a lot of other contemporary filmmakers. And I think they were very good projects. Gurvinder was pitching Chauti Koot, and Chaitanya was pitching Court. There was Anurag Kashyap. But for some strange reason, we won the best award that year. But all the others made their films, and I could never make my film. It's still under production. It's been now 6 years. Yeah. But I used to be in touch with him because I got a little money from the Film Bazaar, the market. Pinaki used to say that, Vipin, you have nothing in your film that can sell. Because your film is all about archaeology and anthropology, and it doesn't sell. Yeah, it doesn't sell. But I think that apart, we do have critical discourse. But I'm saying we are having this debate at a very particular moment of time because of the fact that we've gone beyond the end. Actually, this is the times where we are standing. So, what kind of dialogue and discussion can you have actually? There are philosophers like Merleau-Ponty, who would say that you have to go back to history to kind of make your present continuous more vibrant, actually, past as present and present as past. There are postmodern thinkers like Jean Baudrillard who would say that, to understand the real for us, but he has said, people like Baudrillard says that, we have moved from the real to the hyper-real. Hyper-real has no ideology and it has no history. What do you do? So I think this whole idea about the purity of image making as pure images need to be relooked because the question is that the image has already done its auto-destruction. Now in this context, the question that one has to ask is that, I am not denying the fact of individuals to dream of pure images, but this is what there are new media practitioners who talk about database narratives. There are fellow filmmakers and fellow students. My own students sitting in the auditorium. I keep asking that. What is the process? Is there a pure image? So I think let's see the clip because the clip I think could be interesting because it can pose very many questions. And we can take up that in the question and answer session. Start with the plan.
C'est que, il me semble, jamais la contre-information n'a suffi à faire quoi que ce soit. Aucune contre-information n'a jamais gêné Hitler. Non. Sauf dans un cas. Et quel est le cas? C'est là que c'est important. Ma seule réponse, ce serait la contre-information ne devient effectivement efficace que quand elle est. Et elle l'est par nature, donc c'est pas grave que quand elle est ou devient acte de résistance. Et l'acte de résistance, lui, n'est ni information, ni contre-information. La contre-information n'est effective que quand elle devient un acte de résistance. Quel est le rapport de l'œuvre d'art avec la communication? Aucun. Aucun. L'œuvre d'art n'est pas un instrument de communication. L'œuvre d'art n'a rien à faire avec la communication. l'œuvre d'art ne contient strictement pas la moindre information. En revanche, il y a une affinité fondamentale entre l'œuvre d'art et l'acte de résistance. Alors là, oui, il y a quelque chose à faire avec l'information et la communication, oui, à titre d'acte de résistance. Quel est ce rapport mystérieux entre une œuvre d'art et un acte de résistance, alors que les hommes qui résistent n'ont ni le temps, ni parfois la culture nécessaire pour avoir le moindre rapport avec l'art? Je ne sais pas. Malraux développe un beau concept philosophique. Malraux dit une chose très simple sur l'art, il dit c'est la seule chose qui résiste à la mort. Je dis, revenons à mon truc tout à l'heure, au début, sur qu'est-ce que c'est, qu'est-ce qu'on fait quand on fait de la philosophie, on invente des concepts. Je trouve que là, c'est la base d'un assez beau concept philosophique. Réfléchissez, oui, qu'est-ce qui résiste à la mort? Ben oui, sans doute. Il suffit de voir une statuette de 3000 ans avant notre ère pour trouver que la réponse de Malraux est plutôt une bonne réponse. Mais on pourrait dire, alors, moins bien, mais du point de vue qui nous occupe, ben oui, l'art, c'est ce qui résiste. C'est ce qui résiste. Et c'est peut-être, non pas la seule chose qui résiste, mais c'est ce qui résiste. D'où le rapport si étroit entre l'acte de résistance et l'art, et l'œuvre d'art. Tout acte de résistance n'est pas une œuvre d'art, bien que d'une certaine manière elle en soit. Toute œuvre d'art n'est pas un acte de résistance, et pourtant d'une certaine manière, elle l'est. Quelle manière mystérieuse, là, il nous faudrait peut-être, je ne sais pas, il nous faudrait une autre réflexion, une longue réflexion pour... Ce que je veux dire, c'est, si vous me permettez de revenir à qu'est-ce qu'avoir une idée en cinéma ou qu'est-ce qu'avoir une idée cinématographique. Lorsque je vous disais, prenez le cas, par exemple, entre autres, des strobes, lorsqu'ils opèrent cette disjonction voix-sonore, dans des conditions telles que, marquez l'idée, d'autres grands auteurs l'ont prise d'une autre manière. Je crois que chez les strobes, ils la prennent de la manière suivante. Cette disjonction, encore une fois, la voix s'élève, elle s'élève, elle s'élève. Elle s'élève et encore une fois, ce dont elle nous parle passe sous la terre nue, sous la terre déserte, que l'image visuelle était en train de nous montrer, image visuelle qui n'avait aucun rapport avec l'image sonore, ou qui n'avait aucun rapport direct avec l'image sonore. Or, quel est cet acte de parole qui s'élève dans l'air pendant que son objet passe sous la terre? Résistance. Acte de résistance. Et dans toute l'œuvre des strobes, l'acte de parole est un acte de résistance. De Moïse au dernier Kafka, en passant par, je ne cite pas dans l'ordre, je ne sais pas l'ordre, un non réconcilié jusqu'à Bach. Rappelez-vous, l'acte de parole de Bach, c'est quoi? C'est sa musique. C'est sa musique qui est acte de résistance. Acte de résistance contre quoi? C'est pas acte de résistance abstrait. C'est acte de résistance contre et de lutte active contre la répartition du profane et du sacré. Et cet acte de résistance dans la musique culmine dans un cri, tout comme il y a un cri dans Mozart. Il y a un cri de Bach. Dehors, dehors. Allez-vous-en, je ne veux pas vous voir. c'est l'acte de résistance. Or, quand les Strobes mettent en valeur ce cri, là, le cri de Bach, ou quand ils mettent en valeur le cri de la vieille schizophrénique, la vieille schizophrène, je crois, dans Non réconcilié, etc. Tout ça, doit rendre compte de... En ce sens, l'acte de résistance, il me semble, a deux faces. Il est humain et c'est aussi l'acte de l'art. Seul l'acte de résistance résiste à la mort, soit sous la forme d'une œuvre d'art, soit sous la forme d'une lutte des hommes. Et quel rapport y a-t-il entre la lutte des hommes et l'œuvre d'art? Le rapport le plus étroit, pour moi le plus mystérieux, exactement ce que Paul Klee voulait dire quand il disait, vous savez, le peuple manque. Le peuple manque, mais en même temps il manque pas. Le peuple manque, ça veut dire que n'est pas clair et ne sera jamais clair. Cette affinité fondamentale entre l'œuvre d'art et un peuple qui n'existe pas encore. Alors enfin, probablement il est très... Eh bien voilà, je suis profondément heureux de votre très...
Based in Vienna and Paris, and I will reflect a bit more on some practical issues that I have experienced in my work concerning these streaming platforms. So on the one hand, I think the streaming platforms, they opened up really new opportunities for people who are producing independent content, because it used to be that there were some gatekeepers. These gatekeepers were distributors, and the distributors were the ones who would put your film in the cinema or not. And it was the only route that you could take to have any way of having any commercial value of the film that you do. Now, I mean, there was Netflix mentioned, but there are so many streaming platforms these days, and some of them are very focused. That means you have platforms for documentary films, for experimental films, and usually the thing is, of course, that these platforms are usually creating value for themselves and not necessarily for the people who create content. The big danger for me is that I think that platforms like Netflix, for instance, they amass content, and even though like virtually we can have now access to world cinema, de facto the content is getting more narrow and narrow, and people all over the world are watching the same content. And I think for the question that is raised in this workshop is that it's actually the best time for film festivals, because Netflix, for instance, they buy now, if you have a film in the Berlinale or in Cannes, they buy every film from a section. They don't even watch it, they just amass content. And this is the opposition to curating or having a political idea of what cinema could mean. They just want to have the most content that they can amass. So I think in this sense, a film festival is more and more important, and it's actually a great time to be a film festival, because a film festival is all about curating, it's all about making specific choices, it's about what kind of aesthetic do you want to present to an audience. Whereas for Netflix, it is not about aesthetics, it's about algorithms, it's about, algorithms, they will more and more bring it to the most common denominator, which is like a mass taste, the taste of a mass audience. Whereas a film festival, it's very important to have a counter narrative to this kind of monopolizing idea of what a film should look like. So I think if I answered this question of this panel discussion, I think you could scream for the streaming platforms because they give you the opportunity to make a counter narrative, and not just this. It creates this public discourse which doesn't happen in this social media world. You only listen to yourself or what the algorithm tells you that you should listen to. So I think even though these streaming platforms, they open up chances, because even if you have a film in Rotterdam now, Netflix will give you 30,000 euros. Just to put it it gets lost in the algorithm. Maybe nobody will ever click on it, but they give you the money. And maybe this enables you to make another film. And I think, it's on the one hand, of course, because they create so much money that they are, right now, other independent filmmakers in Europe, like streaming platforms like Netflix, like Mubi, they really get into this, what maybe used to be a world sales agent. They give, before a film is made, they give you money to produce the film, so they have the exclusive rights to put on their platform. What I would maybe also want to point out, that there is something called Karagaga. It's a peer-to-peer network. I don't know. It's something really shared by filmmakers, and for me, this has a big archival function, because you could say that this whole Netflix things, it's a big digital archive, but in fact, it just concentrates the focus on a particular ideology. Whereas there are other peer-to-peer networks where you could say it creates a more democratic idea of what film is. And I think the same relates to film festivals. And so in speaking to this subject of the panel, I say, hooray to the streaming platforms, and hooray that there are the film festivals that promote exactly the things that are not being popularized on Netflix.
That's already said, and I just want to apologize to all of you that I didn't come prepared, because Vipin just kind of asked me last minute and I didn't want to refuse him, but let me just demystify a few things here. I don't want to reiterate or be redundant with things that have already been said, because a lot of that was already going on at the back of my mind, but I must tell you that, let me first introduce myself. So I kind of live in a double world of sorts, where I've been on one side a film buff, like being a supporter of distributing. I created a startup where we were trying to distribute world cinema way back 15 years ago, and we couldn't survive that. It eventually became a channel called UTV World Movies, and thereafter I'm happy that that tradition continues, where today there are films here available which like on platforms that are also available on platforms like Mubi, which are available theatrically also, because they have a new way of showing films. I don't know, you guys are familiar with Mubi, right? Yeah, all of you, more or less. So why I wanted to discuss Mubi and other platforms is because I think Amazon and Netflix are just at the tip of the iceberg, because that's like as all my other speakers have said, that they are trying to cater to the highest, just talking to the maximum number of eyeballs that they can grab through algorithms, data, and what have you. Because for me, I'm also been on the sales side and distribution side, so I'm kind of the odd guy in the room in that sense, because I've been someone who's been on both sides of the table. The reason for that was I did produce some independent films, and I realized that it's good to be on that side to have solidarity for filmmakers, rather than just stand on the other side of the fence and say that it could be a bit polarizing. So I, for example, the company that I currently work with, and before this I've been with a company called Cinestan, which was in the sales business, and the idea was to promote Indian independent film. Having said that, one also needs to understand art film, independent film from India, coming out of India or anywhere else in the world, is all going through what I call the larger concept of commodification, which film festivals are not oblivious to other things that are happening around the world. So we face those ripple effects in everything. And I personally feel that, having said that, we know that communication has happened in all aspects and all spheres of life. But at the same time, I think it's, as my last speaker said, that it's actually hurrah times for all of us, because I think we all cohab and coexist together. So the question is whether we will survive. Yes, I'm very hopeful that the big screen cinema experience will survive in its own shape and form, parallel to all other forms. And I'm saying this with authority because I work, my company, the company that I work with currently, works very closely with Netflix. And I remember selling independent films like Mukti Bhawan, Jatinder Ganj to Netflix, Amazon. Today their data is saying something else because they're catering to the lowest common denominator and just trying to capture maximum eyeballs. So from that perspective, I see a clear demarcation of interest in terms of, I see more and more newer emerging platforms that will eventually come up to cater to the unknown filmmaker of India. I think I see that space, and Beena is here, we've been in the market, there are platforms that are emerging. If there are filmmakers in this room, I would strongly suggest them that they be a little open, because the market dynamics of, let's say a film like Bahubali might not exactly sort of come in with a film that you made, which is a regional language film that, for example, there is a film right now, just as a case study, I must tell you this. I don't know if you know of a film called Amis, which played in Tribeca. It's an Assamese film by somebody called Bhaskar Hazarika. So there is a new platform that has just come in, similar to what I'm saying. So there's a platform in US called Movie Saints, which is also available now in India, which is actually offering you to come and watch that film, and in the event that you like it, they want you to actually pay for it. It's a patronage model. Else, if you don't like it, they will refund your money. So that's also another aspect of the film festival experience. But coming back to the larger topic, whether I don't see this as mutually exclusive in terms of whether film festivals will have an impact for, as far as I'm talking of, when I talk of that, I'm talking purely from a Asian perspective, because I think what Mr. Venkatesan was saying, that Sundance or Cannes had a lot of Indian films, international films that were being bought up by Netflix and Amazon. What also happens a lot of times is that these films do go into these platforms, but then a lot of people don't watch it, except maybe to the initiated, some people might just go discover it. So there's a big question of discoverability of films in terms of how does one know that a film that played in so many interesting festivals, you might not be able to figure out where do you find that film, so unless somebody comes, there's a physical communication that happens through some network, whether it's online or offline. So that human intervention always exists in some shape or form. Maybe it's social media, but there's somebody working very hard to actually come and tell you that, okay, there's a film which was made in Assam, and then of course there's Anurag Kashyap's name to it. It went to Tribeca. It was a very small film because I know the director's past work. And Movie Saints, what they've done is they've taken that film because Netflix refused it. So for me, I feel that a lot of these newer emerging platforms, and I see this also happening with regional cinema coming out from India, South Asia, as well as different other parts of Asia. I would not know much about the Middle East and other regions, but I guess that is a process. I think there will be other kind of platforms. And I also see reverse integration with TV channels. I see a time when there will be some independent channels like Tata Sky. Tata Sky already does some, I don't know, I guess Tata Sky is popular here, right, in Kerala?
No.
People watch Tata Sky here?
No.
Okay, so then I'm talking to the wrong set of people, but I guess you're aware of DTH, right? Like a linear platform which is actually showing festival films. So it's not just, I feel that digital streaming today is being talked about because it's like the dot-com revolution that happened about 20 years ago, when everybody in every nook and corner of this country started creating new dot-com platforms. For me personally, I feel that anybody who likes to watch films would come to film festivals regardless of whether they might watch it on an online platform, but as Adur sir said, films like these would definitely, they have that element of rediscovery. So you will never get that complete experience watching it on a small screen. So anybody who's initiated enough will come back. And anyway, film festivals never catered to the so-called mainstream. I mean, if they did, I would say that that was probably a choice that was made due to various, unfortunate reasons. But I would still feel like, and it's not just people here talk about IFFK, but I see that happening, that a lot of film festivals today, due to patronage reasons or sponsorship reasons, they do have a gala section, which is the red carpet. But that's also, I see that as a kind of subversion, because it's like, if you have to exist, you have to have, say for example, Mami Festival has a brand ambassador like Deepika Padukone, right? So I'm just saying that that's probably because otherwise they don't have money from this big telecom brand which sponsors them. Because film festivals today, when you run a film festival, you know that films that come to you, there's a cost to that, and anybody who owns that will not just give it to you for free. There are those aspects. Because I come from the market, I'm just giving a different perspective of that reality, that when you come here and watch a film like Parasite, there is somebody who's kind of taken that effort to go out there from the curatorial side to talk to content owners, sales agents. There's that whole ecosystem which exists within the art house world. And no offense to people like artists like Vipin, I see that there's a plurality of interest in this, because I see everyone has an opportunity to make films today, unlike other times, and they have every right to come into film festivals like these, because there's a great opportunity to showcase films. And I think what digital has also done, it has fragmented the space to open up to new viewers that otherwise hitherto would not come and watch these films. I think that physical discovery part is something that's very important, because a lot of times even good films that play in film festivals, unless they're talked about, so I come back to my crucial point of the human factor, which exists, I think, at all levels, that people often do, there's that sense of the community, as people have said before me, that films always exist. You can watch a film sitting in your bedroom or your drawing room, but you would still want to go and watch it with friends. And so while that is true for Hollywood films as well, you might talk about that, but at the same time I see that personal cinema, art house cinema has a space, and more than ever before, the new kind of audience, the newer generation that is obviously looking to watch films. At the same time, I would also say that just like how the earlier generation of art film directors have moved into the gallery spaces, how that has transformed, I see that also happening in the world of cinema, in terms of how film festivals today can actually cross-pollinate with movie streaming platforms. Like, even I see as time when Netflix will probably have to come and actually support film festivals. And as more and more filmmakers lobby for this, there will come a time when they will have to negotiate with the theatrical system. They can't sort of cut us off. It's not possible. And I'm saying this with responsibility as a producer, that there are enough stories. We're just sitting at the tip of the iceberg where people are just talking about these things because you have a Scorsese and Alfonso Cuarón. But over time, we don't know what will happen to Netflix, because Netflix is actually focusing more on series than cinema, if you see. So there might come a time that a bigger fish might come and actually take over Netflix. So when people, and I work very closely with Amazon as well. Amazon is not interested in watching, in showcasing cinema that's personal. They are only looking to, while you're shopping and buying merchandise, you can also go and watch the biggest, whatever, blockbuster film that exists. There's also other smaller platforms that I don't know if you're aware of. There's a new platform called Mink that's coming up, which is a, I guess any of you know of the concept of blockchain here? Have you heard of blockchain? Any of you? That's a new technology way where you can talk of, when you watch a film, you can actually go back and talk to the community and actually bring more audience, and you get paid for it. So this is a new platform that's coming up. It's called NYNK, Mink, which is, at the moment, they've started saying that they want to be the world cinema OTT platform for India. And going forward, they will eventually also look at smaller independent films. So that's one aspect of it. I would like to throw this open for question and answers to people who, I don't know if you understand the nuances of digital, because there are many kinds of digital platforms that exist today. So watching a film on YouTube also costs you money, which I think a lot of people don't seem to realize, because you're paying to your telecom operator. So somebody is actually charging you for that film. It's not free. Also, there's a big resistance for films that are being played on Netflix, and Netflix doesn't have great subscriber base, let me tell you that. So it's only like the upper echelons of society that watches Netflix, and it's this kind of audience which is what we call the tech-savvy audience that watches Netflix. At least that's what the numbers say to us. I would like to believe that. Having said that, I also see opportunities with, I don't know if you know, lesser known OTT platforms. Like in Bengali, there's a platform called Hoichoi. I don't know if any of you know of that. Similarly, I see that with Marathi platform that's just going to come up very soon. I'm just slipping the name right now. And with more and more regional cinema, film curation possibilities, I see an opportunity where I just met somebody at the film market who's going to launch like a OTT platform where one of the key interests is Malayalam independent cinema. Now, what we call independent is another question by itself, what they want to curate, because these are all, again, done through various kinds of human interests and curators who have their own choices and preferences. But having said that, I feel there is enough space for everyone in terms of coexisting, and I don't see this as a threat, where I think the cinema experience will remain as is. I would rather say it will augment itself and go manifold. I think also there's a new concept of people going and watching films in disposable cinemas, which there's a new concept called picture time, where you can actually book your own kind of, like, it's like a sort of, it's like a balloon-like thing where you can actually build your own. Like, you don't need a brick and mortar cinema. You can create like a tent-like thing in very short time, in 2 hours, and you can actually show a film on a Barco projector, DCI compliant, like 5.1, 7.1 sound. So that's, I've seen that in the Goa Film Festival recently, and I see that also as a way of, I don't know if any of you know about the Bring Your Own Film Festival. I see those kind of things happening more and more with these kind of technological interventions. Also, one other thing I want to tell you is, I just discovered a new platform here. It's called TechG Digital. So that already has Adur Sir's films. They're streaming them, but I don't see that that will be a hindrance for somebody to come and watch a retrospective of his films or other important filmmakers from this region or other parts of the world or other parts of India. Yeah, and I would just like to first give you a primer of various kinds of, do all of you understand video on demand as a term? Like, are you familiar with VODs, with the various kinds of VODs that exist? Because I think it's important to understand these things a little more deeply. Because when we say streaming, there are different kinds of streaming that happens. So even a TV channel today has its own apps, like if you've heard of Hotstar and Z or a Sony Live, these are also another kind of avatars of TV platforms that showcase films through streaming. And sometimes you will see that while they will show the big blockbusters, they might sometimes curate a film that you would not expect, okay? but that doesn't mean that that will sort of kill that film. I see that only as a trigger point, as a discovery point for for people to engage and discuss and have a dialogue or discourse about that film in other shapes and forms. So because I think we all live in those fragmented times when we don't have that kind of pure one window, like the big screen is, we live in the world of multiple screens. It's a kind of hybrid existence that we have. So for me, I feel that all of these screens choices that you have today actually will lead to people going into watching films in the big screen, despite having a state-of-the-art home theater screen or whatever. Any questions or any doubts about technological questions about OTT platforms, VODs? I'm happy to answer them, because I think what I realized here talking to people, sure.
You mentioned Bong Joon-ho, like what I read is like his movie Okja is made for Netflix.
Which one?
Okja is made for. The reason he did it, like what I read is like he got the chance to do the final cut.
Basically, Hollywood studios always have what they call the producer's cut, right? So basically, Netflix, Amazon, there's a few others like Hulu, and I don't know if you've heard of. There's a company